been trying to go live all day with our 2020 Leap Day special, and I think I got it. So here we go. It's upside down. It's upside down.
Wait.
It's always upside down. Let's try this again.
Hello and welcome to the Leap Day 2020 episode of the Berean Manifesto, brought to you by the Ecclesian House. I'm Pastor Bill, and with me is Pastor Nooms. You might have seen him if you've come to our Ecclesian House Fellowship broadcasts, but this is his first time on the actual podcast.
Yes, it is.
Not for lack of me trying to...
I'm trying. Technical difficulties.
Hello and welcome to the Leap Day 2020 episode of the Berean Manifesto, brought to you by the Ecclesian House. I'm Pastor Bill, and with me is Pastor Nooms. You might have seen him if you've come to our Ecclesian House Fellowship broadcasts, but this is his first time on the actual podcast.
Yes, it is.
Not for lack of me trying to get him to write some episodes and record some stuff.
It happens.
But his first appearance actually here with us. So, how you doing today?
I'm good.
You good?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, Leap Day comes around every 4 years. It's every 4 years.
7.
No, 4 years.
I thought it was 7.
No, it's 4 years.
Okay.
Because a year is 365 and a quarter days long.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just slice off that quarter and then quarter of a day and then lump them all together once every 4 years. And so I was watching some TikToks earlier this year, and there's people who legitimately don't know what Leap Day is. Like, they've heard the term, like adults, like grown adults. They've heard the term, but they have no idea that once every 4 years, February has 29 days. Isn't that crazy?
Crazy is a good way of saying it. I would call those people something else. Crazy is
You're
acceptable.
being so nice.
I'm trying.
All right, so
You make me thirsty when you take a drink. Don't do that.
yeah. So this episode we have a treat for you. So I went back and I looked at all of our episodes from the very beginning. Now I do have to give a little disclaimer. Like, we started making episodes in April of 2017, and then in October of 2017, the program I was using on my phone, the company went belly up. And so they were like, you can no longer use this to record, no longer use this to host. So we had to go find a new host, which then, I can tell you we went with Podbean. They serve a lot of churches, a lot of ministries, so we went with Podbean. And when we transferred all of our data over from the previous host into Podbean, all of the analytics for all of our previous episodes just disappeared. Everything started over at 0, right? So I went through and I found all of our most listened to episodes, except I don't have the data for that first, 6-7 months
Something like that, yeah.
of data. But surprisingly, all of the episodes that ended up being our most popular episodes since we switched to Podbean are episodes that came out during that first 6 months. And I didn't
People liked you better then.
I think they did. I think they liked the hello and welcome to, versus what I do now, which is the hello and welcome. But nobody that I know personally likes it. They're all like, dude, that's so cheesy. It makes me want to turn it off every time I turn it on. I'm just like, hello, and I'm like, oh gosh, I can't have the strength for this today. But that's what it was then, and now it's just a little bit more toned down. But that's okay. So I built this whole matrix thing, which took me hours in Microsoft Excel, where I manually put in all the data for all of these episodes, not only how many they've been listened to over the life of the Berean Manifesto podcast, but were any trending, how long did they trend, when did they trend, and every episode got a score, an overall score. And what ended up happening is that these 4 episodes that we're going to feature today rose to the top, and then 4 episodes from within the last 6 months rose to the top after those. And I had a conversation with Nooms, and I was like, should we mix these in and just kind of like, this was the most popular, but maybe we'll do this one and then one more modern one and back and forth. And he was like, no, if that's what the metric shows, then that's what we should go with. So
that's what happens when you're a data-driven person.
Yeah, when you're a data-driven person, you go with the data. You don't call it on
emotion.
You go with the data. So here it is. This is the 4 most popular episodes chosen by our listeners, according to, you voted by listening to them, basically. Yep. Our 4 most popular episodes. And interestingly enough, we don't talk a lot about, we don't give altar calls, really, with the Berean Manifesto, or even in our fellowships, because we believe that salvation is more of a discipleship thing, and we don't believe that just saying a quick prayer and then going your merry way with no follow-up has any real substance to it. Maybe in a small percentage of people, they actually find true faith that way, but not a blanket across the board. But interestingly enough, this first episode, which is the 4th most popular episode, is basically an altar call. And I didn't intend for it to be that way. When I recorded this episode, I literally had no script. I literally was just, it's Resurrection Sunday. I am going to talk about the gratefulness in my heart about being Resurrection Sunday, and this is what we ended up with. Hello, and welcome to episode 11 of the Berean Manifesto, brought to you by the Ecclesian House. I'm William Shea, and today is Resurrection Sunday. He's alive! He's risen! Matthew 28:6. The angel told them, Jesus is not here, for he is risen, as he said. Come, see the place where the Lord was laid. And there was nobody there, right? The tomb was empty. The stone that it took several men to put into place, that was sealed, was rolled away. In this act, Christ defeated death and sin. And that salvation, it's a free gift for you. To receive that free gift, you must confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead. The free gift doesn't require you to be perfect to receive it. Just the opposite, actually. This free gift works best when you're not perfect. This free gift works best when you find yourself at the end of your rope. It works best when you feel that all is lost, and you feel hopeless, and you feel like nothing can change, that you're trapped. This is when it works best. This is also when it's the hardest to receive it. Let me tell you from personal experience that when you receive that gift, the changes in your life and your heart start then, not before. Jesus never said, go away and get perfect and then come back. He said, come as you are. So, on this Resurrection Sunday, if you're listening to this and you are in that place where you're ready to receive that free gift, you're in that place where Maybe you've hit rock bottom, or maybe you can see rock bottom from where you are. Maybe your marriage is falling apart. Maybe you can't seem to find your way out of the bottom of a bottle. Whatever it is, there's no need to be ashamed in front of God. God knew who you would be from the very beginning and what struggles you would face, and He still came as Jesus, and He still allowed Himself to be crucified for you. So if you're in that place, send me an email. ecclesianhouse@gmail.com. I will email you back. If you send me your telephone number, I will call you back. If you're ready to give your life over to the Lord, then now is the time. If you're not ready to give your life over to the Lord, if you're not ready to receive that gift, then I want you to ask yourself, what's holding you back? What's keeping you from taking that step? If you did receive that gift, if you're a Christian, if you're listening to this because you want to learn and grow, that's amazing. I love that you're here. Today on Resurrection Sunday, I would ask that you pray for those that are listening that might not be where you are. That might have come across this because one of their friends told them to listen to it, or they just happened to stumble across it on their own. And you listening to it that aren't a Christian, that hasn't taken that step, that's right, I just asked all the other listeners of the podcast to pray for you, to lift you up to God, because you're worth it. Jesus thought you were worth it, because you are. So that's all I'm going to say today. Email me if you're in that place. Give me your phone number if you need a call. ecclesianhouse@gmail.com. Until next time. Right. So, before we get into your notes.
I have no notes.
If you are in that place where you are ready to step into a relationship with Jesus, absolutely email us, call us. We actually have our own, URL now, so we have different email addresses. The email address that was just given is still good, ecclesianhouse@gmail.com. But if you would like to email prayer at ekk.house or info@ekk.house, a little easier to remember how to spell, you're welcome to send me an email there. Both of those inboxes go straight to my inbox. You can also give us a call and leave a message. We have a message service, basically. It's 817-369-8331. And what happens with that is I actually get texted a transcription of the message you leave. So I get a text message. As soon as you hang up, it transcribes it. It sends me a text message. I get to see what you said. And I am still available and willing to call anyone back who sends me their telephone number. They need to talk. They need, one-on-one prayer. I'm available because this is ministry. This isn't, just us talking out of the world making noise, So, all right. Now that I got that out of the way, what are all these notes that you're making during the podcast?
I don't make notes during podcasts.
Well, what is all that then?
I just write things down.
Okay.
Yeah, none of these are to be shared.
They're just for you.
They're just for me.
They're
not to be shared. That's not the point of this. The point isn't to sit and wait. Oh, okay. So, I don't do this typically during the week, as you well know, because of the normal podcast. I'm like, it was good.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the things that I have to say.
You're famous. It was valid.
It was valid. There's a lot that, I agree with you on almost everything, of course.
Usually.
There are some things we don't agree on.
Right.
But there are times where a lot of the things that I think of when I'm listening to the podcast are more like jokes or like, well, that's not right, that kind of thing. And not that it's wrong, that the word choice is wrong, or that this is wrong, or that, but it's not appropriate normally in the normal fellowship to be like, by the way, you paused as a period, you should have paused like a colon, because it's an editing thing. There's lots of reasons why. So I'm going to preface that as I do this. But that's kind of the point of the leap days. It's supposed to be a little more.
It's a special thing.
It's a special.
So basically, take anything he says now with a grain of salt.
Take everything I say with a grain of salt. Not now.
Ever.
Always.
Anything ever that Pastor Noob says, take with a grain of salt.
Okay, so the first thing, I'm going to go in order of the podcast.
Okay.
Because why not?
Why not? That seems like a good way to go.
So the first thing is, you said, the act of that resurrection, that act, defeated sin and death.
Okay.
I would argue differently.
Okay.
Because there are lots of things that were done in those 3 days. The resurrection, I believe, did defeat death.
For sure.
Sin, there's a couple things that Jesus did during that time. During that resurrection, there was the time that he was down. There was the time he went down to Sheol. There's the time that he was, different things. And then the resurrection.
Right.
And, we've spoken about that on other podcasts, so people can go and listen to all of them, because you should listen to all of them. I'm not going to tell you what episodes, just all of them. So, and we've talked about different things like that. But
all 166.
That's right. All in a row. Do it now. Thank you. There's that aspect. But I understand what you're saying, and it's completely valid. It's just that whole thing of a lot of people forget in modern Christianity that there were things that were done in those 3 days.
Right.
He didn't just chill and sleep for 2 days and 23 hours and then go, ha-ha, I'm awake.
Right.
He was actively doing things on our behalf. There was the going to Sheol.
Not just our behalf, the behalf of everyone that died before.
I mean, yeah. Including the preaching in hell.
Preach the gospel in Sheol.
Not hell, in Sheol. And so there's lots of things that were done.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, that's something we just have to remember.
Right.
And for the general populace, because we sometimes, I was having this conversation with my mother, we sometimes, as people who constantly is an incorrect term, those of us that study and learn and read and do different things, we forget sometimes the people that don't.
Right.
Like, not like, I don't even think about people. But it's one of those things where it's like faith.
Yeah.
Grace. Hope. You forget. Other people don't have hope. Like, I'm short on money one week. I'm not worried about it. God will give us food. It's no big deal. It's good. Other people don't have that. I don't know how they survive. But that's beside the point. So that's the first. We have to remember that time between. Right. One of the other things you said it a lot in that particular podcast, was free gift.
Okay.
Free gift. And I understand your motivation behind the term free gift, because it's free to us.
Right.
But there are no free gifts. Jesus had to come.
Just like you're talking economics now.
Well, not just economics.
Not just saying it's a free lunch.
Just, the standard
the
of
universal
life.
balance, something has to be paid.
A perfect person on earth, it's a free gift for us.
But it wasn't purchased free. Yeah.
For him,
it costs everything.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, it's not just like we say it kind of off the cuff. He came, he lived, he died. People were jerks. His family at some points were jerks.
They stood outside the house and called him crazy. His own brothers and sisters.
His disciples at point were jerks. I mean, there are people who throughout, and then you die in one of the most horrific ways. One of the most. There are more, of course, but one of the most horrific ways ever. Then you have to go to hell. Well, shoot.
I don't know, man. You said there's worse. Having your spinal cord and your ribs and your internal organs exposed to the rear side, where people can literally just see your small intestine hanging out of your flesh while you're carrying across.
Sorry.
That's pretty bad.
I'm sorry. Boiling oil.
John survived boiling oil.
By the grace of God.
You don't survive crucifixion.
You don't survive boiling oil, typically.
John did.
by the grace of God.
I'm sorry, John. I'm sorry.
God was straight up like, I need him to write a book.
Yeah,
and
that.
humans were like, I'm gonna dip him in burning oil. And God's like, no, really, he has to.
No, seriously.
He has to write a book.
He's not
sorry.
done yet.
But think about it. Slowly being dipped in from your toes while you're the boiling oil. I mean, have you ever not worn a shirt and cooked bacon?
Again, I've got the scars to show where I splashed bacon grease on me.
From your toes, slowly up as it eats away until your body goes into shock and you die.
Now, is that on the same level with Nero's human candles, where they would dip Christians into wax to make them into candles and then tie them to trees and light the tree on fire to light the courtyard when they were having parties? Because that's how they lit the courtyard when Nero had parties, was with Christian candles.
I don't know. Both are pretty bad.
I think they're pretty up there.
It's like, anyway, so
this is not meant to be a commentary on torture.
No free gifts.
No free gifts. So the cost, but not to you. You don't have to pay a cost. The cost was already paid.
True change.
Okay.
You talk about change. Right. That change starts. That's true change. That's change from the inside of your soul.
Right.
That's you changing from the inside out. Oftentimes we as humans, we find that really cute girl, or we have a job, or we have and so we have to change little things about us. Like, oh, you gotta keep your beard at 1 inch because you work at Pizza Hut, and I don't anymore. So this is gonna grow.
That's gonna grow.
So the little things you do change. But this is that true change from your inside of your soul out. And we are so going to go over an hour, but that's what the point.
Okay. Oh, yeah, we're definitely not going to make it. We were thinking, this will only take an hour. It's going
to be longer. Yeah. This is going to be the least listened to podcast, surely, for the fact of...
how long it is.
Oh, my God. All right, so rock bottom.
Rock bottom.
There's that aspect of, you said, reaching rock bottom. A lot of people don't always understand what rock bottom means, that term. People are like, okay, well, it's you're going down rapids, you go off of a waterfall, and then there's jagged rocks at the bottom. It's not just, oh, well, I hit the bottom. It's this idea of life was already bad.
Right.
Life was bad, then you fell off a cliff, being carried by water, then you hit rocks.
And broke both legs.
Yeah.
And have no rope. Have no you have no GPS phone, you got nothing.
Rock bottom is this term that we use that
no hope.
Sometimes I don't think everyone grasps, because as we were talking about earlier, some people have just forgotten what certain things mean, like leap year. Or
they've forgotten what suffering is.
Yeah, because we are in our modern day.
Like we've been to other countries where we've seen suffering, right? And then we see people in the United States who are like, oh, I'm suffering, and it's kind of like, well, what you're suffering from is a lack of perspective.
I love that I'm poor. Oftentimes that upsets me so greatly, because it's like, yes, you are struggling to survive in the current economic
state that you're in, but you ain't poor.
Go somewhere where you're making bricks out, literally bricks, and then you're taking scrap metal that people have thrown away and building your home. You're not poor. You are poorer. You are not poor.
Right.
I often say, I'm broke today. Because I'm broke. There is nothing in the bank. That does not mean I'm poor. That means I am broke. I cannot go eat out. Oh, no. Anyway, the last thing is, God knew, you talked about how Jesus knew we were who we were when he still made the plan.
Right.
And you got to think, it's not just made the plan. When he started this whole thing off, he knew what was going to happen. It wasn't just like, oh, we're going to create these guys. Ooh, they might do something bad. No, before that, he knew we were going to be dumb as rocks and stubborn as nails. He knew it. He knew going in, and yet still did it because of his love for us.
And that's one of the things atheists bring up. They'll say, well, that's sadistic that God would, knowing that people would end up going to hell, knowing that people would suffer, he'd still go forward with creating everything. Well, God can't help but create. It's in his nature. So there's a certain point where for God to be God, he had to create. B, if God knew the end from the beginning, and the New Testament tells us it's his will that none should actually perish, then don't you think that this being who knew the end from the beginning, he did everything he did in the exact right way so that the most people possible would find eternity with him? He had to have followed certain steps and done things a certain way in order to redeem the most amount of people. And if he'd done it any other way, then less people would have been redeemed. And so it's this whole thing of you are fully known, you are fully loved. God did everything he did, knowing exactly who you were going to be, exactly what you were going to go through. And he did it a specific way to be able to give you a hope and a way to find salvation. And even though he knew every detail of you.
And that's it. That's all my notes.
That's all your notes?
That's all my notes.
Okay, cool. All right, so this next episode is
odd.
It's odd?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it odd?
Because it's not something you normally talk about.
Prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so but when we say prosperity, we're not really talking about money, though.
No.
Right? We're talking about
common misconception.
That's a common misconception. When we say prosperity, we're talking about in the wider scheme of, prosperity.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's just move forward. Hello, and welcome to the Berean Manifesto, Episode 4, brought to you by the Ecclesian House. I'm William Shea, and if you've been listening up to this point, you know that I'm about to tell you that you need to be looking up the things I say. The scriptures that I bring up, I suggest downloading a program to your phone or your computer called eSword. It's a free program, e-sword.net, and it's going to have the King James and the King James with the Strong's Concordance numbers and a Strong Concordance built right in. Or you can go out and pick up a Strong's Concordance if you're a paper kind of person and want to read it in a book that you open with your two hands. So, today we're talking about Proverbs 21:5. So, Proverbs 21:5 says, "Good planning and hard work lead to prosperity." Okay, I know. That's not exactly what the scripture says. That's actually a paraphrase from the CEO of a ministry that I used to work for. The actual scripture says, "The thoughts of the diligent do surely bring abundance, but whosoever is hasty cometh surely to poverty." So that whosoever is hasty, that's specifically talking about people that go about rashly in their business. Instead of taking the time to make plans and to go, okay, how is this going to succeed? Let's sit down, let's write a business plan, let's figure out what the need is, let's figure out how we're going to meet that need, and let's figure out how we're going to get from point A to point B, and then takes that and submits it to other people for counsel. If you don't do those things, then you're going to come to poverty. You're not going to prosper. So we see this same principle talked about by Jesus in Luke 14. So I'm going to turn my Bible over to Luke 14, and if you've got your Bible out, which would be wonderful, you don't have to have your Bible out. I was talking to someone the other day who listened to the podcast while they were doing the dishes. So you could be doing the dishes, you could be doing laundry, whatever it is, just make sure that at some point you look these scriptures up yourself, because God forbid you should just take my word for it. So in Luke 14, starting at verse 28, "Is there anyone here who, planning to build a new house, doesn't first sit down and figure the cost, so you'll know if you can complete it? If you only get the foundation laid and then run out of money, you're going to look pretty foolish. Everyone passing by will poke fun at you. He started something he couldn't finish." Now, granted, in context, he was talking about counting the cost of becoming a disciple and using this as a teaching example. But the principle is the same. Everything you do as unto the Lord. So, every act that you put your hands to, whether it's starting a ministry or starting a new job. Are you going to go work at Taco Bell? Are you going to go pass out water and food to the homeless? In all of these areas, you should do these things as if you're doing them for the Lord. And internally, you should be expressing that as if it is an act of worship to the Lord. These are your reasonable acts of worship. That you're doing these things with excellence. That you're doing these things as if you were a disciple. So, going back to the Proverbs 21:5 idea, good planning and hard work. Thinking thoughts that are diligent. Following through. Being a trustworthy person. These are the things that lead to prosperity. And when I say prosperity, I don't want you to get me wrong. I'm not specifically just talking about money. I don't want anyone to think that I believe that if you're actually poor, if you don't have money, that it's because you didn't plan well and you didn't work hard. Prosperity is a word that expands way beyond the idea of having money or not having money. Prosperity being just money is an idea we get from modern secular culture. Not Christian culture, but the culture of the world that says, if you don't have money, you ain't nothing. You and I both know that's not true. When I say prosperity, I'm talking about things like health, wellness, family, joy, peace. Basically the fruits of the Spirit that are talked about in the New Testament. If you don't know those, you should go look them up. You should look into what they are and what those things could do for your life. Because when you embrace the prosperity of the Lord, not the prosperity of the world, I'm not talking about being a millionaire. When you embrace the prosperity of the Lord, you're going to find yourself looking at the world differently. You're going to find yourself being more in control, even if you don't have 2 pennies to rub together. I've been there. I, for the most part, am there. But that doesn't matter. My prosperity, my riches, are when my wife looks at me and she smiles, that particular smile that I know means that she's happy with me and she loves me. When I get home from being somewhere and my kids yell, "Daddy, you're home!" and they run up and give me a hug. When I'm laying in bed late at night and it's dark and I just feel the presence of God and I'm overcome with this sense of joy and peace. These things are my prosperity. So, I encourage you to find out what prosperity is to you. Find out where and how God wants you to be a disciple. Make some plans. Draw them up. Submit them to some friends who are smarter than you are. And see if anything floats. Go out there. Make a difference, even if you're just working at a fast food joint. There are people around you that are hurting, that need the love of the Lord, that need you to speak into their lives. So, this is William Shea with the Berean Manifesto saying, until next time.
Why isn't it starting?
The next segment won't play. play.
15th segment now.
So, there is a next segment of the video, but it won't play for some reason. So the next 15 minutes and 48 seconds of the video is, I don't know. I guess we'll skip it.
Okay. So the first thing I wanted to do was reread that Colossians chapter 3, verse 8 in the CSB. But now put away all of the following: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and filthy language from your mouth. So we had this conversation on Sunday about language, right? And for instance, the word that you've used 3 times, right? I'm not going to say it because I don't really curse a lot.
You don't.
Sometimes I do, but it's got to have a reason, you know. It's got to be actual something for me.
There's a reason,
right? And so this word that you've used is actually an acronym from shipping.
Yeah.
It's stow high in transit, and the reason it came about, and the reason we call poop this word, is because when they would stow manure for putting on crops, they would actually put it into the ship first at the bottom, you know, because they didn't want it to basically leak out of the box and get all over everything and da-da-da. But they learned that if you dry it more, then it doesn't leak out. But the problem is, when you stow it on the bottom and salt water mixes in with manure, it starts to release the gases from the manure, and then methane, and then they would light the ships with open flame, and the ships were exploding. So when they were shipping manure, when they were shipping cow poo, or let's be honest, at this time they were using human poo mostly, they would stamp on it SHIT, which is the acronym for stow high in transit. Now, do we think, or have we ever thought, that when Paul wrote, and filthy language from your mouth, is he talking about rude words that polite society doesn't use?
So,
because wouldn't he have issue with Jesus saying whitewashed tombs?
yeah. So in my past, what I was taught as a child, yes, because it's filthy and dirty, and they're dirty words.
Back when you got in trouble for listening to DC Talk?
Right. Yeah.
Which literally stands for Decent Christian Talk.
Yeah, I know. I know. There were lots of issues back then. I grew up very conservative, and there were problems. But the thing about it is, when we talk about cursing, and we talk about cussing, and we talk about foul language, certain things are societal.
Right.
Certain things are religional, and certain things are personal. You know, religiously, you should not curse someone. Do not, call upon something or someone to do something bad to them.
Like GD, GDU.
Yeah.
Right? Because your intent there is to curse them to hell.
Yeah, and that's
inappropriate.
No, David did it a couple times.
Now, the song, Roxanne, why you want to party all night like Roxanne? GD. He's not cursing there.
He's not cursing at her.
No, he's using it in a colloquial.
I would consider that foul.
It's not respect. It's not respectful, yes, but he's not cursing anyone there.
Because that's the whole using the Lord's name in vain, in my opinion. Because you're using the Lord's name for something it's not intended. Is my opinion.
Okay.
Because it's not. You're not calling to. Now,
I'll accept that loose definition.
Like
of
my wife.
That,
my wife will hit her
command.
hand, right, and she'll be like, "Oh, and you're like, baby, and she goes, "No, I was asking him to help it because it hurts." And you're like, "Well,
I was calling upon the name of the Lord."
I don't think that works that way. But then there's the personal, societal. Society decides, you go over to Europe and churches, pastors
from the pulpit,
they'll
use words that here we wouldn't use out on the street.
Yeah. Australia, don't even get me started.
Oh man, that's
so
fun.
There are places that it's different.
Yeah.
And so you have to think of it. In companies, in business, as you know, I'm more of a business person overall, and in business,
In the tech world.
yeah, you have to understand.
That's important to specify.
It is very important. Yeah, it's a lot different in the tech world than like when I came from healthcare.
Right.
Because healthcare, everyone is very like a little more somber.
Clean
In
cut.
the tech world, I had an EVP in my office last week. Executive Vice President.
There you go.
In my office the other day, not office, but office building. And you could hear him up and down the aisles, just yelling at people and just not. He's just loud. And he's just expressive like that. But it was like some of your more tame. We're in the Bible Belt. Like we're in Texas. Like some of your more tame people are like, oh, he said the F word.
Oh, or working at Walmart.
Yeah.
Out on the floor, nothing.
No.
There's none of that happening.
As soon as you're in the
back, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it can get bad. So I think it's that aspect that we really have to look at as a culture and as a person, personally. You have to decide where are your lines. Where are your convictions?
And not just that, what we said earlier is knowing the right environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you have to know your own personal convictions, but then you have to realize that you may be okay with saying certain words, but going into the middle of Walmart and yelling certain words isn't the appropriate place to be using those words. And that's one of the reasons why I have trouble with curse words in songs. Like I brought up a song about Roxanne, well, he's not being quote-unquote cursing, but also he can't control what environment that song's being played in. So there's no responsibility there. Like, that's highly irresponsible to be using that kind of language in a song that, they could be playing it on an elementary school or could be playing it on a playground somewhere.
Kids Bop, though.
Kids Bop, yeah. Well, then you get Kids Bop Karens that just don't care. And
No, I know. Okay, so, now my notes.
Now your notes.
Now my notes.
Yeah, because I got out what I wanted to say.
So the first note, the most important note, is the moist Christians come after the dry Christians.
You gotta explain that to me.
So, when the
moist Christians.
when the dead in
What's
Christ.
a moist? Oh, I see.
The ones that are in boxes, they rise first. The ones in the seas, they rise second. And the only thing I can see is like the old Scooby-Doo episodes with like this shanty, and he's got the seaweed hanging off him. It's totally grossly inaccurate of what it's actually going to look like. But that's what I see is you have your zombies that rise in varying degrees, and then you got your sea monsters that rise. And so the moist Christians come after the dry.
But then halfway to Jesus in the air, we're all transformed. So that only happens halfway to Jesus.
But that halfway is
people on the earth going,
scary and ugly dudes and chicks rising.
No, I get it.
It's just okay.
The moist Christians come after the dry Christians. Okay. In order of who gets to go first.
So, and then there's that aspect of, and then the breathing ones.
And then the fleshy ones. We need to get rid of.
We have to wait completely. So
we get to sit here and watch all this stuff happen, and then we get to go.
And if you don't lose your bowels.
I'm just hoping I'm asleep when that happens, so I don't have to see all that, and then I can go.
Well, the planes crash. There's lots of issues that are going to happen. So, like, we were talking about Cloud of Witnesses, and the martyrdom.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that
he uses the word murder.
Yeah. One of the things that I was kind of not taught, but talked about in school was, everyone dead is the Cloud of Witnesses, like you're supposed to.
Just like I was taught, yeah.
And then one of the things I was thinking about.
But then when you question it, they say something like, well, God's outside of time, so maybe they are too, and we just can't understand what's going on.
And see, that's the little aspect that I'm going to go with.
But I'm very Gnostic in my theology. Like, I believe that answers exist.
Answers do exist. One of my philosophies of it always were the judgment. Like we've talked about so much in podcasts and stuff. Everyone's there for that.
He could be referencing the judgment. He could.
And if that's the case, that's everyone. That's not just the dead in Christ.
Everyone.
That's not just martyrs. It's
everyone that's ever lived.
When you're in the judgment and you're going through and they start actually doing it, that's everybody. Everybody. Now it's gonna be kind of interesting and short for some people, and real long for some.
It's gonna be long for everybody because the first will be last and the last will be first. The last people to live on the earth will get judged first, and then Adam and Eve will have to watch that, and they'll have to watch everybody before they get judged, and then they have to watch everybody before they get judged. So everybody's gonna be there the whole time going, "Oh my gosh, when is this?"
No, but what I mean by that is like we on Earth today, 80 years,
Okay.
right? Middle Ages, you got 15.
Adam and Eve, 900 years.
900 years. We gotta sit there and be like, dude, man.
How long did you live, Adam?
It's true to say about immortals. Like, it sucks those last 200 years. You did some crazy stuff, dude. Can you sit down? Like, there's time, you're gonna look at kind of like, it'll be interesting.
I'm so thankful I didn't live that long because there wasn't that much for God to judge.
Yeah, it was like, you did some stuff.
You lived, congratulations, here's your crown.
Years and
here's
years
some
later.
jewels. You
Right.
weren't so good there, but
In year such and such, and year such and such, and you're going.
But it's not even a year though. It's like in this second, all of this was going on in this second. Oh,
Yeah.
oh my gosh!
And then it's like, hey man, you went kind of sideways between 400 and 500 there for a minute. Like, you did some, okay, so I wanted to say that.
The moist before the dry.
Moist before the dry. So,
Still getting me.
absent from the body is the key word there.
Sort of.
I think I've always thought, because everyone, absent from the body. Well, when you die, your spirit leaves. Well, if you're just asleep, you're just asleep. You haven't really left the body.
Right, but in context, it doesn't even seem like he's talking about whether or not you're leaving the body when you go read that.
Yeah.
Right? If you cut off everything he says before that, and you cut off everything he says after that, then yeah, you could apply that to, eternity. But that doesn't seem to be what he's talking about in context.
It doesn't. But that is something that that's the argument I always use against people when they start that.
Well, yeah, that's the exact argument. That's the exact thing you bring up is like, well, no, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Okay, well, I'm not going to argue about context of Scripture with you. What I'm going to argue with you is, how do you know that he's saying that the moment of death... Sorry.
What are you doing to my phone?
He was going to sleep. I tried to wake it up. How do you know what he's saying is that the moment of death is the moment that you're absent from the body? Or is it possible that he believes that you're with the body until the rapture?
Or does he believe that you don't know what's going on, so it feels like it's the next moment?
Like when you go to sleep Christmas night.
Right.
Or Christmas Eve night, and then next thing you know...
I mean,
it's Christmas morning!
Which is it? And we don't know, because guess what? We're not dead in the end yet.
Plus, the Bible has to be vague like that, because without faith, it's impossible to please God. And if the Bible gave all the answers, you wouldn't have faith.
So then the last two things about running the race.
Okay.
We're running a race.
I'm glad it's not a physical race, because my knees are shot, your knees are shot.
Wheelchair. Anyway, I got good arms. So,
I didn't even go to work yesterday. I was just like, I was in so much pain.
I'm sorry.
I was like, dear Jesus, was I gonna have a wreck or something? Is there a reason why I'm doing stay home?
So, running the race.
Okay.
And you talk about the weights and so there's Jesus, one of the reasons to look to Jesus, he's the only way to remove the weights.
Right.
The only way to remove what's holding us down is through Jesus. You can't consciously just put off sin.
Well, that's what it means by he's the author and the finisher. When I think about that, I think about Harry Potter characters, right? Okay. So Ron Weasley, he can't do anything by himself. He needs his author to do anything.
Why would you pick Harry Potter as a...
It's just what pops into my mind. I don't know.
Terrible book.
Why?
It's literary. It's just...
It's just Star Wars with crappy lightsabers.
I understand. She's not a good author.
I don't know. It's just what pops into my head.
I don't like the writing style.
Okay, well then pick something else.
I don't care.
Pick one! Tarzan by Edgar Rice Burroughs, he can't do anything with it. See, that's where I have to go to if I don't use something modern.
Okay.
I have to go to Edgar Rice Burroughs, which he's been dead for 80 years. That's the most recent thing.
Because of Poe, The Crow doesn't.
Right. You know, like, you gotta go back
Pick
pretty far to
something
pick where
good,
that is what's good. That's what's, you know.
All right.
Either it's that, or it's, you know, it's either the movies I've watched with my wife, or it's books that
He just blamed his wife.
out of date.
Throw that out there. Just threw his wife under the bus.
I never saw Harry Potter until my wife had me watch,
I don't even own those books.
except for the ones right here, the copy it's right here of all the Harry Potter books.
No.
Right here behind me.
It's.
I thought you were playing
Yes,
off.
I did.
Went there.
No, I was like, is it actually behind you?
No, it's actually behind me.
Zoe's copies are in there.
Oh.
She got them for Christmas. Anyway, so that's the side note. And that clap just woo.
I did.
The levels. Sorry. So that's all I had was just to remember that aspect. And I'd also like to point out, because we're doing so many of these at a time, I'm going to use an extra piece of paper. Just pointing that out.
Yep.
So the next one, the last one.
The last one is our most listened to episode. It got the highest score in my metrics, and I'm really glad that it did, honestly, because it's a great episode, and and it's important. It's a very important foundational episode for a lot of theology and what we believe and why we do things the way we do them as the Ecclesian House, and our aspect towards reaching the lost and how we live our lives. And I don't know if I've been vague enough in the introduction, but
Sure.
Here you go. The most listened to episode of all of the Berean Manifesto episodes.
And the cleanest sheet of paper I've ever ripped out of my book.
Well, you didn't miss the mark there, did you?
No.
Hello and welcome to